welcome back to the channel. I'm excited to bring you another tutorial, but more importantly, this is going to be a wing tutorial, specifically introducing you to my second wing harness, which is now available. And this wing harness is specifically going to be for more larger, heavyweight wings. So not just Mercy, but also for those that are interested in doing larger Lilith wings from Diablo. Yee! In this video, I'm going to be going over, as an example, how I made this set of Mercy wings from Overwatch. And they're specifically painted in my personal Tiffany Gordon cosplay colors and logo. So I'm really excited to show you, and I'll be going over how I made these wings out of EVA foam, as well as using a PVC pipe, and going over the wing harness. But it's not just any wing harness, it detaches. And each wing detaches from the base harness, and I'll be going over everything in this tutorial. So let's begin. And here's all of the tools and materials that you will need for making specifically the wing portion of this, which I'll have links to everything in the description, as well as the 2D blueprint, which I'm going to be using, and that's available on my website, tiffanyGordonCosplay.com. Now for me, after I was done finishing printing off all of the pages of the blueprint and assembling it, I wanted to add the wing extensions for this set of wings. Normally I don't do them, I just do the basic wings, but I wanted the wing extensions. So I did this, and then I ended up getting some tracing paper and tracing off each of the wings individually, breaking each part of the wing down individually and tracing them onto 4mm HD foam. And then I grabbed my heat gun and I heat treated the entire sheet of foam before grabbing my X-Acto knife to cut each of the parts out. And with this specific set of Mercy wings, there are circle details, and I found the easiest way to cut these out was to grab Cos-Tools hole drills and just cut the 3 holes out of each of the pieces. And this is what one blade looked like for me, where I had the main long wing extension, which I had as the centerpiece, the 2 smaller pieces on either side of it, which then were sandwiched by the last 2 with the holes. So in total, each blade I ended up doing in 5 different pieces. Then I traced with a Sharpie on each of the parts where each blade would lay. And this was a good indication for where I was going to apply my glue. And the glue I'm going to be using throughout this entire project is contact cement glue. Reminder, wear that respirator as the glue is toxic, and you'll want to apply it onto both surfaces. Wait for the glue to fully dry before starting to attach your pieces together. And once they were all assembled, I went and I grabbed my Dremel and my sanding drum and I sanded them all flush, just so it had a nice clean finish. I also did go back and I rounded some of the edges as well, so that way it wouldn't look as sharp. And I repeated this for all 10 of the wing blade pieces. I then laid them each onto my blueprint and I kind of cut them all to the same length at the top, so that way they would all come together very easily. And for this, I then grabbed a Sharpie and made a black line, so that would tell me where each of the parts would hit, and it would tell me where to apply my contact cement glue, which made it really easy to assemble all of the blades together. But doing this is not a very structurally sound piece for this amount of blades and weight. So my idea was for the top section of the wing that all of these blades are going to attach to, I was going to make that into more of a box frame. And this box frame needs to be able to fit our PVC pipe inside of it. And if you're using my wing harness, for this specific wing harness, it's going to require size 3/4 inch. So I got the outer measurement of the PVC pipe, and this gave me the measurement for being able to cut a strip of foam out of 4mm EVA foam that I would then end up gluing to the outer part of this, and it would make it a lot more structurally sound. And speaking of the top part, let's work on that now. And And again, I got my tracing paper and traced just this top part onto it, and then I also traced where each of the individual sections were. This made it so I could then put it onto more 4mm foam and trace each of the parts and cut out with an X-Acto knife. Now there's a circle part on this type of wing as well, and I'm kind of changing it from the Mercy design because this is going to be the official Tiffany Gordon cosplay Mercy wings, so I didn't do all the details on it. But for getting that base circle though, I did want this part to be more three-dimensional, so I ended up cutting this using Cos-Tools circle cutter out of 10mm foam, and then drew a second circle inside of it and then cut it at a slight 45-degree angle using my box cutter. But of course, I'm not perfect, so I had to go and clean up all of those cuts using another sanding drum. Then more contact cement glue to attach the circle part, as well as for the extra detail part that I would be attaching on top. And just like the wing parts, the blades of this, we cut that strip that was going to be the width of our 3/4 inch PVC pipe. We are going to want to do that same thickness for the top part of this piece, so that way we can have a fully enclosed box. So I cut it into strips, and then we're going to be attaching it with more contact cement glue, making sure to leave the bottom section unclosed so we can put our wing blades in later. But we do have to do a tiny bit of touch up, and that's because at this very top part, there's a slight part that goes up. And so for this, I ended up just cutting some more 4mm foam and then attached it inside this piece and cleaned it up so it was even with a sanding drum, as well as sanding all of our seams flat and then rounding the edges. And now that we have the top part and the wing blade parts finished, we want to attach them together. And for this, you're going to want to put it just at the bottom part of the top part and then trace where it lays on top of those wing blades. Also, label it so you know which side attaches to which, because they do vary. Then apply your glue, wait for it to fully dry, and we can attach them together. And I recommend putting a paper towel or something to block one side so you can align the top half first and then flip it over and remove that paper towel so that way you can align the other part without it sticking in the wrong spot. But that should complete all of the foam portion of our wings. Let's talk about the harness now. And here is everything that you'll need for doing the harness, as well as I highly recommend using PETG filament for printing these pieces, as well as if you don't have a 3D printer, you can always use an online printing service to print this out. And you can find my file for this wing harness on my website, TiffanyGordonCosplay.com. And I'll note that in this file, it actually is 3 different pieces, so 1 harness and 2 knuckles. And as I said, I highly recommend PETG filament, as this is going to be really strong and it's going to be the best material for an actual harness. And for printing, I do recommend printing with an infill of at least 15 to 20%, so that way it is extra strong. And for this harness, once you do have it printed, you will need 2 different sizes of PVC pipe. The smaller size is going to be 1/2 inch, and I highly recommend after printing, testing the pipe and make sure it fits in each of the holes that are connected to the harness, as well as to the 3 holes on either side of the knuckle. And you will also need a second size of PVC pipe, and that would be 3/4 inch, and that will be the ones that are going in the 1 hole on each of the knuckles. And just make sure your pipe will fit, because sometimes when you print you might have a little bit of goop inside, or you may have to open it up slightly. And first we're going to be cutting our 1/2 inch PVC pipe. You need to cut 6 in total, each the length of 1.5 inches. And I use a pipe cutter for this. And for gluing these pipes to our harness, we're going to be using 2-part epoxy. But 2-part epoxy does not stick very well to smooth surfaces. So to give our pipes a grip, so that way the glue can adhere to it better, you want to rough up the pipe using 120 grit sandpaper. Then apply your epoxy to the bottom part of each of the pipes, and then a little bit inside each of the holes on the harness and glue together, as well as clean up any drippage coming out of it. After waiting about 5 minutes, the glue should be pretty good where it's not going to be super tacky anymore. And I like to go back with that knuckle and put it on the piece all the way down to make sure that those pipes are sticking perfectly into the aligned holes. And then after that, slowly take it off. Make sure not to leave it on too long, as we do not want them to adhere together. And after waiting 24 hours for that epoxy to fully cure, we can continue to work with it. And up next, we're going to be using a parachute buckle as well as some nylon strap size 1.5 inches. And the length of this strap will vary depending on the size of your body. And to figure this out, you'll want to put the strap on top of your shoulder, wrap it around under your arm and around your back, and kind of get a good idea of how much one side you're going to need. And you're going to cut this into 2 strips. As well as nylon straps fray really badly, and to stop the fraying, you will want to heat up the end. And you can either use a heat gun or you can use a lighter just to slightly melt the edges. Then get your strap and you're going to insert it underneath the top part hole, and then we are going to pin it to itself. You will want about 2 to 2.5 inches coming from the top side, so that way we have enough room to go to our sewing machine and sew the strap together. And I go back and forth in 3 to 4 different lines, sewing downward in a lightning bolt or zigzag stitch, just to ensure that it's really going to hold. And once that's done, you can then insert that same side strap into the bottom hole and then attach your parachute buckle at the end, and it should look like this once done. And now to figure out the length that we want the top pipe to be. And this pipe is going to be size 3/4 inch PVC pipe. And depending on the length of your wings will depend on the length that you want this pipe to be. And for me, for these Mercy wings, I did each pipe around 11 to 12 inches and cut it with a pipe cutter. But for you, depending on if you're making a pair of Mercy wings or other ones, you may want it longer or shorter. You can also heat bend the pipe into a different shape, then just repeat the same process as before with roughing up our edge with the 120 grit sandpaper and using our 2-part epoxy. And again, wait 24 hours before continuing work with this piece. And now for attaching the wings onto our harness. And these Mercy wings, we had designed it to be more of a box. So there actually is a negative space inside that the pipe we can just insert these foam wings on top of. But I want them to be permanent and not floop around, so I ended up using contact cement glue, applying it around the entire pipe as well as to the inside part of the foam part of our wings. And this time, while the glue was still wet, I slid the wings onto our pipe and then held it in place until it dried. Now, this isn't a very strong connection when attaching 2 pieces of foam together with a seam, but when you're wanting to get a basic placement, this is a really good option. And I always recommend when putting on the wings onto the harness part, put the harness on a mannequin so that way you have the exact same angle that you want it to be on a person. And that completes the fabrication part of my foam wings as well as the harness. Now for painting, I'm gonna go really quick with this just because I'm painting my own Tiffany Gordon cosplay wing color, and I really doubt anybody is going to do this because I don't know why. But if you are painting your own version of the original Mercy wings, the Atlantic Mercy or Pink Mercy or any other that, I'll kind of do a basic what I did to help guide you along the way. And here's everything that I used for painting these wings. And means you can always hand paint this if you don't have a airbrush setup and compressor, totally fine as well. And just like any foam fabricated piece, my go-to for priming a piece is Plasti-Dip, which is a rubber spray paint, and I apply it onto all surfaces of my wings 3 times, waiting 45 minutes in between each coat so it can fully dry. And then after 24 hours, once the last coat is done, I can then paint. And my go-to is always using my Iwata airbrush setup and also my Createx Colors airbrush paint. And with airbrush painting, you always want to paint in layers, so I highly recommend doing a base coat. For me, I'm doing opaque white, and this just makes all of the other colors pop on top of the surface, as well as there's a few parts on this piece that needed to be painted white. But once that was dry, I then got some of my masking tape and I masked off all of those edges, and then went to my next color, which was painting all the wing extensions with this mixture of colors to make this teal. And then I did some more shading at the tips of them and then masked those off, and then went to my last color, which was the darkest of the bluish greenish kind of color, to do all of these parts. And then once all of that was dry, I could remove it, and I find it always easiest to use tweezers just because I put them down with tweezers because it's so much easier than my little fingers, but removing it as well just makes it a lot easier. And for my logo, I ended up using my Glowforge and some of the Cricut stencil stickers. I cut out my logo with this, and then I used the sticker and put it on top of the spot that I wanted on my wing, and then I ended up hand painting on my logo. But a little side note, the sticker paper did remove a bit of the white paint underneath when I took it off, so I did have to go back and do quite a bit of touch-up, so just be aware if you do use this on airbrush paint. But once that was done, I just had to do my final coat, which was sealing all of the paint, and that was Createx Colors UVLS Satin, and I do this for all of my painting projects just to protect the paint and give it an even, consistent shine. But that pretty much finished off these wings. Now, as I said in the beginning of this video, these wings are actually detachable thanks to my harness and the design that I did. And I'll show you a little bit. Each wing comes off and is individually mounted with this part, which is a 3D printed part, and then attaches to the base frame here. Now, you might be thinking, how do I wear this with my costume? Well, it is designed specifically to be worn underneath your costume, and all you'll need to do is cut a small hole that will allow all of the pipes to stick out. That'll give easy access for this knuckle to insert onto, and it looks like then you don't have a wing harness on and these just attach to your back. And it makes it a lot easier, so that way you can go to the restroom, you can go through door frames, because that's always a problem with wings. I highly recommend using the parachute buckle, so that way you can adjust the straps if you want it to be a little bit tighter or looser depending on what you are wearing. And I really hope that this will help you for your next costume. And that, guys, is how I made this set of wings, as well as this harness, which again is my basic wing harness specifically for larger, more heavyweight wings. But I do have another wing harness if you're interested for one that's more smaller scale and lighter weight wings. Make sure to check out that one as well if you're interested in making your own detachable wings. But let me know in the comments if you're interested in this wing harness and what you're gonna use it for. I'd really like to know. As well as, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you as part of our cosplay building community here. A big thank you to all of my company sponsors here on YouTube, as well as all of my members, specifically those legendary Prime members. And I really appreciate your support here so I can continue bringing you more cosplay tutorials as my full-time job. And I'll see you for our next tutorial. Much love, guys.